Hey there, it's Miss Birds here, and today and this week, actually, we are going over the elements of art. Now, the elements of art are very important in art because essentially all pieces of artwork are made up of these elements. And the elements are the things that we use in a piece of artwork, and the principles of art are how we use those things. So when we're looking at a piece of artwork, we can really understand and talk about artwork as we know the elements in art. Now, you guys will be creating your own table. As you can see, I have mine here that I already started. If you are working on paper, you can have your paper horizontally as I do, which means it's going side to side, or you can choose to have your paper vertically going up and down. It is completely up to you. For myself, I have chosen to do it vertically, and I've just put the title, the elements of art, right in the center, and I've made sure that I've divided my paper into 6 even sections. Now, if you are doing this digitally, which you do have the option to do, you can do it in either a Google Drawing or a Google Slide. You can choose to either have an individual slide for each one of the elements of art, or you can go through and just have them all on one page and divide your page up as I have. That's fine. Now, we've already watched a little video as a preview into the elements of art, and what we're going to be doing today is really working with those, understanding them, and putting them into our own words or images, as we say, because in art, communication is always made up of images or pictures. So we have 6 different elements of art that we're going to be looking at more closely. We have line. Okay. We have shape. We have color. We have value, form, and texture. Now, what you will be doing is putting an example of these types of elements of art in their own particular section. So the line section is going to be made up of all different kinds of lines, right? So I have what we call jagged lines. I can have kind of swirly or curly lines. I could have dash lines. I could have dotted lines. I could have short lines, long lines, diagonal lines, horizontal lines, right? Any kind of line you can think of. What I want you to do is put some examples in our line box, okay? And as we go through these different elements, some of them are going to be a little bit easier for you to understand, right? Line, everybody pretty much understands what a line is. It is essentially a moving point. I bet if I asked you guys for some shapes, you could give me some shapes, right? The same with color, and some of these are going to be a little bit more difficult, such as value and form and texture even. So some of the ways that we can show value, and if we watched the video or if you were paying attention in the video, value is just the lightness and darkness of a color. And essentially we can create that by using colored pencils, or I can use it with my pencil here, right? So if I push down really, really hard on my pencil, it's creating a darker value. Okay, as I slowly take pressure off of my pencil, I can make my value lighter and lighter as it goes across. So really, when we're creating value, value is a lot of the times associated with shading, right? So when we see things or items or objects or pictures that are shaded, right, where they go really, really dark in some areas and really light in others, that is essentially value. And we're going to be talking a lot more about value later on in the semester as we go through with color, because value is essentially the lightness and darkness of a color. Now, you can show examples of value just using pencil, or you can show examples of value using colored pencil. After I finish this assignment, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Form is a 3-dimensional object. So shapes, like a square, are 2-dimensional, right? And when we say dimensional, we mean the way that they can be measured. So a shape can be measured by height and also width, okay? So that's 2 different dimensions. When we come to something like a form is three-dimensional, which means we can measure it three different ways. We can measure it by height, we can measure it by width, but we can also measure it by depth, okay? And depth means how far back it goes. So right now, this would really just be considered a square, right? It's a flat object. If I make a few lines here, I can make it into a cube, right? So now it's being measured by height, by width, but also by depth, how far back it goes. We can also show form by shading, so adding in different values. And again, we'll talk about that later on in the semester. Texture is something that can be created by an illusion. So we can make something look like it has texture, like hair. Okay, a lot of the times when we see hair, we see lots of strands. It'll get darker on one end, lighter on another. And we can also show texture by taking something that has texture to it and kind of going over the top of that. So let me grab something really quick that's got texture. Let's say, for instance, my pen box, okay? It has a texture to it that's a little bit bumpy. And if I were to place my paper on top of it and go back and forth, I should be able to see some of the texture coming from underneath. Okay, see how it's getting a little bit lighter there, right where the bump is? Okay, so we can essentially take things underneath our paper and create a texture, or we can imply texture by drawing it out on its own. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through and I want you to give me different examples on your paper of line, shape, color, texture, form, and value. And if you are doing this digitally, you should be using the same thing. Now, you can use images if you're doing it digitally. That is completely fine by me, but just make sure that it looks nice, that it looks organized. Keep in mind that this is art class, right? So a lot of what we're looking at art is the way we see it, okay? The way it looks, the way it's organized, the way the composition is, right? Composition is how we place things on our paper. So just be very mindful as you're placing things on your paper. Are you gonna decide to have your title right in the center? Are you gonna decide to have your title up at the top? Are you going to divide your boxes horizontally, or are you going to divide your boxes vertically? Okay, this is completely up to you. It is your decision, but you are required to have all 6 of those elements of art included in your page.